Here are the top stories of the news. Gunmen abduct 5 worshippers inside church in Iwo Local Government Area of Ondo State. Obi criticizes APC government after attack by suspected gunmen in Ondo State. On the foreign scene, U.S. President Trump delivers combative State of the Union address ahead of crucial midterm elections. Good afternoon and welcome to Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. I am Temitope Ajijolaoluwa Ola. Gunmen in the early hours of today abducted 5 worshippers at a church in Iwo Local Government Area of Ondo State. It was gathered that the armed men stormed the church, a branch of the Celestial Church of Christ, at about 1 a.m. while the service was ongoing, abducted the worshippers and took them to an unknown destination. Spokesperson for the Ondo State Police Command's DSP Abayomi Jimo confirmed the incident in a message sent to journalists in Akure today. He further disclosed that one of the victims has been rescued, while one suspect has been apprehended. DSP Jimo added that operations were ongoing to ensure the safe rescue of the remaining victims and the arrest of all perpetrators involved. Operatives of the Department of State Services, DSS, have arrested the 6th suspected terrorists involved in the 2022 attack on St. Francis Catholic Church, Owo, Ondo State. Members of the Islamic State West Africa Province, SWAP, had during the attack killed at least 40 innocent worshippers. No fewer than 5 of the suspects identified as Idris Umeza, Al-Kazim Idris, Jamil Abdul Malik, Abdullahim Idris, and Momo Tuho Abubakar were earlier arrested and are currently being prosecuted. It was gathered that the 6th suspect had been evading arrest nearly 4 years, making him one of the most wanted fugitives in Nigeria. It was gathered that DSS operatives who had for years been on the trail of the 6th suspect, identified as Sani Yusuf, arrested him in a Gosa community along power line in Ovia North Local Government Area of Ondo State. Yusuf, a high-profile commander of the ISWAP, after the Owo Church attack, temporarily sought into Kano before deciding to relocate to the sleepy community in Ondo State. Former presidential candidate and a chieftain of the African Democratic Party, Peter Obi, has criticized the All Progressives Congress APC government after an attack by suspected gunmen. Gunmen suspected to be political thugs attacked some chieftains of the ADC at the residence of the erstwhile APC National Chairman John Odige Oyego in Benin City, Edo State. The incident was said to have occurred shortly after the chieftains returned from the ADC Secretariat, where they formally welcomed Olumide Akpata into the party. Reacting to the incident, Obi describes the attack as an assault on democracy. He vowed to take up the matter with the relevant authorities to bring to book the perpetrators of the incident. Obi, a former Anambra State governor, also accused the APC-led federal government of tampering with the nation's democracy. The ADC also condemned the incident, saying it is a disturbing development.
Former governor of the state, and you can see what happened in front of his house, where hoodlums came shooting. If you look at the gate and everything,
let's see the bullet
at his gate. See the several cars damage and everything. That is where our democracy has reached.
President Bola Tinubu has appointed Assistant Inspector General of Police Toji Diso as Nigeria's new Inspector General of Police, replacing Kayode Egbetokun, who resigned earlier today. The presidency confirms the resignation of Egbetokun as the Inspector General, saying the former police boss's resignation was due to family issues that require his undivided attention. The special advisor to the President in Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, disclosed this in a response to an inquiry by newsmen. However, multiple presidency sources have claimed that Egbetokun was asked to step down during a meeting with President Bola Tinubu at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja, on Monday evening. In other news, the federal government has filed fresh criminal charges against the senior advocate of Nigeria, Mike Ozekome, over alleged use of a fake Nigerian passport in a disputed property case in the United Kingdom. The federal government filed a 12-count charge against Ozekome at the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Abuja. The second defendant in the case is Pomfa Hussaini, the son of the late Jeremiah Hussaini, a former FCT minister. Earlier, the FCT High Court struck out charges filed by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, against Ozekome on the same issue after the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice withdrew the charges. Amnesty International Nigeria has raised the alarm over what it's described as an escalating pattern of repression in Kano State, alleging that individuals who criticize Governor Abba Yusuf are being subjected to arrest, detention, and intimidation. In a statement posted on its official Facebook page, the human rights organization said it is deeply concerned by the disturbing patterns of arrest, detention, and harassment of persons simply for criticizing and making dissenting commentary about the governor. The group alleged that in most of the documented cases, those targeted were either arrested or invited by the Department of State Services, DSS. According to the organization, Abba Ibrahim Hussain, a law student at Northwest University, was allegedly abducted from his residence in Kano by armed DSS personnel on Sunday for criticizing the governor. He remains in detention and risks missing ongoing examinations. The rights group also referenced the case of Aminu Wakar, described as a social media influencer and government critic. He was reportedly detained for 5 hours over the weekend on allegations of cyberbullying the governor. In another instance, Samir Hanga, some of the only NNPP serving Senator Rufa Hanga, was said to have been subjected to what Amnesty termed an intimidating DSS invitation for questioning after criticizing the governor, but he was later released. Amnesty International called on Nigerian authorities to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the right of everyone to freedom of expression, insisting that arresting critics is unacceptable in a democratic society. In Nigeria, the most recent electoral act is the Electoral Act 2026, which was signed into law on February 18 to replace the 2022 version. This explainer by Gift Oladipo examines the major changes to the Electoral Act.
In a democratic society, an electoral act is the legislative instrument that guides, oversees, and manages the administration of an election by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. It provides a legal framework to ensure that elections are fair, transparent, and credible. Recently, Nigeria transitioned from the Electoral Act 2022 to the Electoral Act 2026 amendment, an act that started as a legislative response to the challenges of the 2023 general election. President Bola Tinubu, on the 18th of February 2026, signed the Electoral Act 2026 amendment into law.
It's not as important as the history aspect of this. What is crucial is the fact that you manage the process to the extent there will be no confusion, no disenfranchisement of Nigerians, and that we are all going to see democracy flourish. It is time that we have confidence in our system. No matter how good a system is, is managed by the people, promoted by the people, and the result is finalized by the people. In fact, for final results, you are not going to be talking to the computer, you are going to be talking to human beings who will announce the final results. And when you look at the crux of various arguments, maybe Nigerians should question our broadband capability. How technically are we today? How technically will we be tomorrow?
Now let's take a look at the changes or reforms in the new Electoral Act. There is a dedicated INEC fund which establishes financial autonomy and reduces the timeline for disbursing election funds to INEC from 12 months to 6 months before polls. A mandatory bimodal voters accreditation system, BVAS, which connotes that presiding officers must use BVAS or other approved technology to verify voters. The signed Electoral Act also states that polling unit results must be transmitted electronically to the INEC results viewing portal with penalties for non-compliance. This particular provision faced a number of controversies, but there was pressure on the Senate to approve it.
That's what we suffered before. We don't want any glitch again. Yes, glitch is finished. We want things to come up. Yes. No more glitch. No more glitch.
The new act also maintains that political parties must submit verified digital membership registers to INEC 21 days before primaries, while introducing tougher penalties and accountability measures to curb electoral malpractice. These include a 2-year jail term for resident electoral commissioners who withhold vital documents, 6 months imprisonment, or a 500,000 naira fine for presiding officers who frustrate the electronic transmission of results, 2 years imprisonment or fines between 500,000 naira and 2 million naira for vote buying, impersonation, and result manipulation, and a 10 million naira fine for political parties that fail to submit accurate audited returns. The Act further scrapped indirect primaries, allowing direct primaries where registered party members will each cast their votes to choose the main candidate, and a consensus where the party leader will name a candidate as the unanimous party choice. It also introduces changes to campaign spending limit, setting 5 billion naira to 10 million naira for presidential, 1 billion naira to 3 billion naira for governorship, 100 million naira to 5,000 million naira for Senate, and 70 to 250 million naira for the House of Representatives. It also introduces measures to improve inclusivity, including queue separation where cultural norms require it, and support mechanism for visually impaired voters. On voter registration, the National Assembly has removed the National Identity Card and Driver's License from the list of acceptable identification documents contained in the Electoral Act 2022, narrowing the documents required for voter registration to 3: a birth certificate, a Nigerian passport, and a National Identification Number, NIN. Meanwhile, with the introduction of a downloadable voter card, Nigerians may no longer need to wait hours at INEC offices to collect their cards, as the Electoral Act Amendment Bill allows voters to download their voter cards directly from the INEC website. The downloadable cards are projected to increase voter participation in the next polls. While the previous Electoral Act prescribed 6 months deadline for submission of all party candidates, the 2026 Electoral Act mandates political parties to submit the list of candidates at least 4 months before the election date, stating that INEC final list of candidates should be published 2 months before the election day, replacing the previous 150-day provision. On the 21st of February 2026, just days after the new Electoral Act was signed, the Federal Capital Territory Area Council election was held, becoming the first under the fresh law. The election was an opportunity for Nigerians to see and feel how the 2026 Electoral Act would be deployed, following assurance from INEC Chairman Joash Amukpiton that bimodal voter accreditation system (BVAS) would be used in units across the FCT for voter accreditation, and results would be electronically transmitted to the INEC results viewing portal. As Nigeria approaches the 2027 general election, the 2026 Electoral Act is expected to stand as one of the solutions to the problems faced during polls. Gifts Oladipo, Western Spring Television.
You're watching Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break. Please stay with us.